Chapter 7 begins our study of geometry, and in Lesson 1 we start with lines and planes. We're going to go through this very methodically, always about how to identify what we're looking at, how to label it, and how to name it. And the reason we're going to look at it in that way is because that's how you'll be asked on your worksheets to give information. So how to identify a point. Very simply, it looks like a dot. So for example, that. How do you label it? You label it with a capital letter. So if they have a dot sitting here and they want you to label it, you would label it with a capital letter. And how do you name it? You either name it with a dot and a capital letter, whatever letter they have there, or the word point and the letter. Simple. Now let's move on to lines. You identify a line by not only the fact that it's straight, but because it has an arrow on each end. If it doesn't have an arrow on each end, it is not a line. We label it by using 2 points on the line with capital letters. So for example, there'd be a point there, maybe a point here, and we use capital letters, and it doesn't really matter what letters we use. We're going to use C and Z. And you can also, although you don't see it as often, you can use a cursive or a written letter. Then it would be a lowercase letter at the end of the line, either right above it or down here right below it. You don't see this as often. You normally see lines labeled with the points. And then how do we name a line? We name it by using the 2 capital letters and then on top what looks like a line, the straight line with an arrow on each end. So this one here that I created, I would have to write as CZ with the line on top and an arrow on each end. That would be for this particular line. That's how I would name it. Now we move on to array. Array has a dot on one end and an arrow on the other. So we see a dot, an arrow, a dot, an arrow, and it can go in any direction. It can point upwards with the line part, downwards, diagonally, it doesn't matter. We label array by using a capital letter for its endpoint. That's what the point is called, the end point. And then another dot along the line. So for example, if I had a dot right here, then this could be A, B. This is the only one where naming it is kind of picky. It says here that you name the array using the capital letters, the endpoint first, followed by the other point on the ray. You draw the ray above, and it must point to the right regardless. So this particular one, I'm going to label A, B. They would both be named the same way. And this would be the same one for both of those. The endpoint first. A is the endpoint on each. B is another point along the line, or the ray. And it's pointing, meaning the line part has the arrow toward the right. So that's the one that's a little bit tricky. The rest of them, it doesn't matter which letter comes first. And but this one is important to do just exactly the way they want you to. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at is a segment. We often use the word line here, even though we really don't mean line. We missay what a segment is often. So hopefully you won't catch me doing that. A segment looks like a line, but instead of arrows, it has endpoints on either end. Okay, so that's identifying it. Labeling it, capital letters. naming it with those 2 capital letters, and then just a plain straight line on top. You do not need to have the dots. It just is lacking the arrows that an actual line has. So this would be called segment AB. All right. Now we said at the beginning this lesson was about lines and planes, so let's talk about planes. A plane is a flat surface, so the top of your desk, the top of the table, the top of a book, those are all planes. A plane is formed by 2 lines that intersect. So where the side of the floor and the width of the floor, length and width of the floor join, that is where your plane begins. 2 lines that are in the same plane that never intersect are called parallel. I know that you've seen that word before, parallel. And here's something that you have to be careful with parallel. Sometimes we get caught up in the idea that parallel lines have to be on a plane that we can see. So I want you to picture in your mind for a moment the classroom. We have 4 walls, we have a floor, we have a ceiling. Okay? If we use the front wall, where the smartboard is, and we looked at the line that is the top where the ceiling meets and the wall meets, that line there, and then the line where the floor and the wall meet, we can see that those are parallel lines because we see them on that plane. If we were using that top line where the ceiling and the front wall meet, and then we're using the back wall and where the floor meets, those are also parallel. And they're parallel because they'll never intersect and they're on the same plane, but they're on a plane that we don't physically have a picture of, meaning there's a diagonal plane through the room that connects those 2 parallel lines, and we can't see it. It's that part about parallel that actually makes this one the one that many people have trouble with. And it's the word skew. 2 lines in different planes that never intersect are skew. This one is one that would be easier for me to explain with you in the classroom, but I want you to think about, if you were in the classroom, could you find 2 lines that are never going to intersect, but they are not on the same plane, even a plane that you cannot see? They just are not on the same plane. So think about that, and we're going to be talking about that idea in the classroom. All right, that's it, and we're going to be talking about this in the classroom and then doing some practice together. Thank you.